Good evening. I call the Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Committee meeting to order. And we have one item on the agenda. John, you want to go ahead and proceed?
Sure, thank you. So what this mainly amounts to is basically an accounting exercise. It's related to our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update that we're currently underway with. The way we had this programmed was that we programmed the funding in federal fiscal year 24, which just ended at the end of September, with the intention that as we continue to work on the program, that we would roll those funds over into federal fiscal year 25. The DOT, however, wanted us to basically compartmentalize those funds in each year that the activities were actually taking place. So the money that we were going to roll over, they want us to reprogram through amendment into federal fiscal year 2025. So that's all this action is.
Thank you. Any questions for John? All right, entertain a motion setting December 10th, 2024 as a date for public hearing for amendment to the FY 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Program.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Any policy committee comments tonight? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Will we
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria?
So I pulled item 15 because there was an error in the council action form that got posted, and I just wanted to be sure that anybody who was interested in this item understood that what was described on the cover page was not what was actually covered in the report. And there's Corey, who could probably explain exactly what difference it makes.
Yes, sorry for the confusion. So noted in the report, there are 2 active TIF districts for next year. The TIF district associated with Barilla, which will be the annual rebate payment to them. And for the first time, we also have the North Dayton Industrial Park payment. So this will be the first time we've certified debt for that debt obligation to the developer. So 2 active ones. We had a couple others that have exhausted. So Campus Town was the Kingland development. We've completed our payments on that. So I think we had those 2 mixed up. So apologize for that.
And the mention of the downtown reinvestment district that's the one that isn't
Yes.
covered, right?
Yes, we would. Yes, that's in place for future development, but we haven't activated that yet with the county. So, yep.
So the alternative one is approve city's annual 2023 urban renewal report and appropriating payment of a rebate for Barilla TIF and North Dayton TIF districts. Is that accurate?
That's
then?
correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Are we splitting this into multiple votes, or is it just the one?
Just alternative number 1.
Okay, I will move alternative 1. Will we approve this?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you, Corey. All right, moving to public forum. This is the time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Please understand we'll not take any action on your comments, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And I see Richard, you want to start us off?
Yeah,
Would you please come up to the mic, please?
the hospital board of trustees meeting yesterday, they had a thing that I wanted to speak at public forum there, but they told me that it had to be on what was their agenda. And it's like I waited till the end of that meeting and I spoke that I wanted to speak about the oath of office that they all swear to, all the elected officials swear to. And I asked Trump and Harris and in letter, and I asked you, Mayor Hala, and I tried to ask them, and it's like the things I talked to them a little bit about after the meeting was over. I mean, they all swear they wanted to talk about the things of the state legislature and at the national level too. And it's like I kind of feel like they don't want to listen to me talk about those sort of things. And I'm very upset with all of that. And it's like, it doesn't seem right.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to address council under public forum?
Hello, good evening. My name is Taylor Burkhead. I live at 709 Clark Avenue. I wanted to make a comment about the busing. We had a forum or some type of meeting at the library the other day, and I just wanted to reiterate about the importance for people, and especially people in Ames, having a bus that goes to Nevada. There's a lot of things that people use in Nevada. It's the county seat. And it's particularly the jail, the jail's out there. And so the police will bring people to the jail, and then there's not a lot of people that'll bring people back to Ames from the jail or the other administrative buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ianka Mitchell-Conway. I am making a comment about a disturbing thing in my neighborhood. I noticed in the past 2 weeks that there were 4 stickers from neo-Nazi Melissa groups on South Duff Avenue. This is a new thing. When I talked to the Ames police about it, they seemed pretty untrained in how to deal with it. I contacted the ADL about it, who actually had the training to deal with it, and who felt that Ames police could use more training. If Ames wants to continue to be a safe place for students internationally of all backgrounds and belief systems, we need to address this issue and make it clear that any recruitment pipelines to be disrupted for these violent groups.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hey guys, my name's Josh Pfeiffer. I just wanted to real quick talk about, you don't hear a lot about drugs. Meth is a very, very big problem in Ames. It's huge. It's a lot worse than people think it is. I just got an apartment close to the Bridge home, just moved in. Honestly, that ship's gonna sink real soon. I'm an addict, okay? I am a drug addict. I use meth. I'm actively trying to quit. I'm on probation. These guys just keep coming around over and over and over again, offering it, asking where to get it. And it's just taking more and more people down. So I think it's something that people don't talk about a lot, and it needs to be talked about. I've had multiple conversations with the police, the drug task force, and nothing, just, they keep making me feel like I'm the one in the wrong, that I just need to move. And that's not right. So that's how I feel. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item number 21. And just before we start, just want to review how this is going to go tonight. Staff will present just a quick overview of their report. And council will ask any questions that they might have. This item actually was on the agenda for October 8th. We held a public hearing that went on for over an hour. Everyone who wanted to speak did speak. And so statutorily, council is under no obligation to receive public input tonight. However, given the significant matter before us, I am going to invite public comment tonight. However, I'm going to limit it to 45 minutes and 3 minutes per person. We have gotten well over 100 pages of emails. We have gotten a staff report. I personally have talked to a number of people, face to face. I know that council has as well too. There's probably been phone calls as well. And so I believe that we are pretty clear on what the issues are, the concerns. This is not meant to try and control or limit, but the point is that I believe that 45 minutes should be adequate. So when I ask someone to come up from the list or from the card that I've received, I ask you to limit your time to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, 15 seconds, the microphone will be cut off. You'll be ruled out of order. We want to give everybody a chance who signed up to get to the microphone, but that may not be possible tonight. And so if we get close to the end, I may ask for a show of hands of people who are supportive of what the speaker is saying. And please, if you send an email to us, we have read it. We do take all these seriously. So if you're going to come in to microphone and make some comments, we would hope that it would be something that would be new or fresh, but not a repeat of what you emailed to us. Because the point is, we do read the emails. We want to make sure we get people have a chance to present. The other thing is, I do have a list of people who presented and talked at the last meeting. I'm going to start with people who didn't have a chance to speak to council first, and we're going to try and alternate between pro and con. So we try and give equal airtime. And then once we get to that point where we've exhausted that, we'll then just go ahead and try and get as many people in. So if you can keep your comments at 2 minutes, we can get as many people in as possible. That'd be great. So with that, Kelly, we'll go ahead and have you start up.
Good evening. As the mayor mentioned, we did a public hearing on a proposed zoning text amendment specifically to allow a social service provider use within the single family conservation overlay. That would be by a special use permit, which is a separate permit through the zoning board of adjustment. So whatever action comes from this is at most a process to establish an option for applying for a permit. So no final action in terms of approving the Romero House or any other type of social service provider in the area would be the outcome of tonight. So if council does move ahead with any of them, it is to create a process, just to make sure that's clear for the public, that that's how that would go. So as a zoning text amendment, we're talking on a broad scale. The single family conservation overlay is about 350 properties. We have, we'll probably use this map for reference for most of the night. So we've had a lot of discussion in October about the different types of uses in the neighborhood, the intent and purpose of the overlay. It was established in the 90s to look at preventing or discouraging the erosion of the single family home property type that is in this area. There had been a lot of conversions to multifamily properties in the area. And so the city did two things at that time. Two big things of this overlay are to restrict uses and then also to have certain design requirements for homes. There's also an historic overlay in part of the district, but the district is bigger than the Old Town Historic District as well. So the original proposal was to look at anywhere in that blue area to be eligible to apply for a social service provider use. And that label allows for quite a variety of different things. It's not one type of use. It could be for overnight sheltering. It could be for daytime services. It could be for a variety of different things that are just not residential uses. At the October 8th meeting, we discussed some alternatives. There had been quite a bit of input even at that point to look at more specific criteria, to consider restrictions on the concentration of providers in this area, and a lot of other discussion that really led to council on the 8th tabling the item to have the public meeting that we had last week. And the focus of the public meeting was to talk through at that point, essentially four alternatives for approval and the option to deny the request. So we focused on options 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are in the council action form. We made that available for comments and questions, as well as just general comments at the public meeting, and the council action form obviously details that for you. We've tried to summarize our notes from the meeting. We've bulleted out the main themes that we thought we heard, kind of representing the neighborhood's concerns. The options were modified a little bit in response to that input. So option 1 is alternative 1 is the original proposal. So that is just to straight away allow social service providers by special use permit everywhere in that area. And then alternative 2 was something that we had proposed as staff in October to look at 6th Street and 8th Street as the only area, 6th Street and 7th Street abutting the neighborhood commercial areas as the only areas where maybe a use could be allowed. At the meeting, there was a little bit of discussion about how that alternative worked. And there was an emphasis that if that was to be done as the alternative, that there should still be other restrictions. There was a concern about creating a corridor of non-residential uses down 7th Street or down Clark under that alternative. So we have modified that to come back with an ordinance that would allow for one new social service provider use in that area. Back in October, it was not limited to one. There's 17 properties in that area. And then alternative 3 and 4 that were discussed also at the public meeting and in some form discussed in the October meeting are to look at changing the land use to commercial for 2 properties, which would be 702 Clark and 703 Burnett. And the reason to do that is you do not affect the rest of the overlay. There's no other change of use. There's no other process that affects any other blue area other than those 2. Now, the downside of that is there's a commercial land use. There's more uses brought into the picture than just social service providers. You would need to also adjust that zoning district to make social service providers a special use permit. So we have put that forward as an option. That is still something that is viable. And then the 4th option is a little bit more open in the sense that if council is more interested in a more narrow definition, more specific criteria, more specific standards than what we've described, you would look at alternative 4 as a way to refine the standards for the use or the definition of the use. We've had some comments about what that could be, but we did not develop a specific alternative there. We would need to have a little bit of direction of intent. And if you were to pick that alternative, we would also need to start over the process because we'd be amending new sections of the code that are not part of this description as we have been through this part of the process so far. So overall, staff, we've gained a lot better insight into the neighborhood from the written comments and the public discussion. There's been a much better understanding of kind of the history of the overlay, I think, for everybody, as well as kind of how the neighborhood feels about the different uses there and kind of what the balance is. I think the key description that I heard was that idea of the balance of the neighborhood and what's the tipping point. And the tipping point being, when does it start to move away from being a residential neighborhood to being some other kind of transitional neighborhood? And the overlay obviously was intended in the 90s to try to create a balance and keep it on the residential side of that tipping point and not see it move more towards a transitional neighborhood or a multifamily neighborhood. So many people spoke about that concern, especially if there is a proliferation of other uses into the area. A lot of discussion about the issue of homelessness in general. This use obviously is the particular requester serves interests of the homeless. The use amendment itself could be for other things too, but I think the conversation has basically been driven by the homelessness management issue of the area in general. So Romero House, who was the original applicant, obviously is not the reason that there is homelessness in the area or anything like that. They are a service outreach effort to meet the needs of those people. I don't think anyone in staff or anyone at the City Hall believes that they're a reason for the issues in the area, but they are providing services in response to a community issue. I think that was the next issue that was discussed by other people that are maybe for the amendment, is the idea that there's a need for service in the area. And for staff, as we started to look at the input, I think I had this question also come up in October: where could this be done? If not here, then where? Which is a reasonable question for a zoning code amendment. So we did provide to you a map that illustrates where the use is permitted already in the city, as well as where it's permitted by special use permit. And there's many areas across the city. I think the question is, well, what about downtown? For the most part, there are areas adjacent to downtown, but they're to the south and to the east of downtown of where you could locate this use without having to have city council make a zoning text amendment. So ultimately, after we heard the public input, kind of put some more of the information together that we could from as requested by the neighborhood and as developing these alternatives, we feel that there is opportunity for this use in other places. It's not that there's a lack of opportunity. So to me, the idea of just approving it because there's nowhere to do it in the city would not be the supporting rationale. I think you would have to look at this and say there's a reason that we need this to be here and that it fits here and it can serve the needs of the community in a compatible manner here. So although it can go in other places, that's what makes you look at alternatives 2, 3, or 4 probably. So staff believes if you move ahead with this amendment, alternative 2 fits best the comments that we thought we could really refine down as a city for the neighborhood, which would restrict it to one more user and then be in that existing Clark or 7th Street corridor. So with that, that's kind of a summary of everything we've went through, our recommendation. Obviously, we have all the maps and all the data from the 2 reports available if you want to see any other visuals or any other comments that we may have already published for you. Any questions?
Questions for Kelly?
Kelly, there might be some people wondering about the petition that was filed by the neighborhood. Could you say something about what happened with that?
Correct. So under Iowa law, when you're doing a zoning change and it affects a district, so the blue area would be a zoning district in our code. If more than 20% of the property owners sign a petition and submit it prior to the close of the public hearing on the proposal, it would trigger an automatic supermajority vote. So for our council, that would be a 5 votes required to approve an amendment. However, the council held the hearing in October and closed that hearing, and we did not receive the petition until last week. So per state law, it's a petition of information for you, but it doesn't trigger the mandatory supermajority vote.
And do you have any impression of what the percentage of
Excuse me, Corey,
property
could you
owners is?
make sure, I think so everyone can, in the back, and
Oh,
you make sure that
sorry.
we're close to our microphones so it's picked up so they can hear.
I'm usually too loud.
No, I understand.
Could you say something about your impression or the number of signatures? I mean, would that have met the 20% property owner burden if they had got it submitted on time? I'm just trying to judge whether this was an overwhelming show of something.
So we did not validate we didn't go through the exercise of validating signatures. So I can't say of the 100, I think we left it with 117 in the memo I provided to you. So that was 117 signatures, and again, roughly 350 properties. So roughly a third. So if those were all valid signatures, you're looking at about a third of the area signed that petition.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, we will go ahead and we're going to proceed to public input. And if you would just give me a second, I'm going to get a printed sheet of those who have signed up online. All right, we're going to start, and if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to start with Liam Erke. Is that correct, Liam? And you have state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liam Erke. I'm currently a resident staff member at the Ames Romero House, 709 Clark Avenue. I want to speak in favor of this amendment and to the importance of the location for the services that we provide. I think a key thing that we provide our guests that we serve is the feeling of being at home. It is important that we are in a residential building. Our goal is to make our guests feel as though they're being served at like grandma's house, and it can be feel at home for the afternoon that they're here. Because so many people, it's just, here's a line, here's a just very commercial building, and we're trying to make an environment so that our guests can actually feel at home in that place. So that is why I think it is important that we are at 702, because it gives us the space with almost 4,000 square feet and still the feeling of a home that is very different to that of any commercial building. So that is what I'd like to offer to the city council, and thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you. All right. Excuse me. Mike Dubé.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Dubiel. I live at 807 Douglas Avenue, so obviously I'm a resident of the neighborhood. And I'm speaking in opposition to the amendment. Residents of the Old Town community are sympathetic but frustrated by the increase in antisocial and non-normative behaviors among users of social service providers' services. There is overwhelming evidence that a considerable percentage of unhoused people suffer from untreated mental illness or addiction. It is reasonable to infer that providing an increase in social services for unhoused people within the confines of the single-family conservation district will increase the incidence of antisocial and non-normative behaviors within the district, because an expansion in services will likely attract more users of those services. Residents of the neighborhood have spoken with the city and documented their concerns about an increase in the number of unhoused people in the Old Town neighborhood and the increase of non-normative behaviors, including public camping, public defecation, increases in assaults. The Board of Trustees of the Ames Public Library has documented in the minutes of their meetings challenges experienced by the library dealing with unhoused people, including verbal and physical confrontations outside of the library, along with an increase in people camping in front of and near the library. During a November 19th, 2024 meeting held at the Ames Public Library, city staff was asked what the city of Ames is doing to address the issue of stability in the neighborhood, the increasing number of homeless people in the neighborhood, and the needs of the people and of the homeless. A staff member replied, quote, "The city council is aware of the problem and we need to develop an overall plan to deal with the issue," unquote. It seems reasonable to request that the city have a plan in place before it considers amending the zoning code to allow an expansion of social service providers. For this reason, I respectfully urge the council to deny the proposed zoning text amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Rebecca Runyon.
Good evening. Can I just start by saying how happy and excited I am to be in a room full of such caring people. I see faces that I know on both sides.
Excuse me, Rebecca, would you please address your comments to council, please?
Certainly.
Thank you. You can say the same thing, but
Sure.
just you're talking to council. Thank you.
Oh, good. Just trying to be inclusive. Everyone here tonight wants a solution. Some people want a text amendment, some don't, but I think we all want a solution. And so I would venture to say that all of us would rather live in a community where we didn't even need social services. That's probably a little crazy and utopic of me to say. And I think that there was once a man named Matthew who said, he was quoting some very influential leader who said, "The poor will always be with us." Therefore, while there's part of me that's like, I don't even think a text amendment will fix the issue and was going to be in opposition to this, I decided to speak tonight in favor because while downtown is walkable, accessible, the ideal location for such services based on the guest needs, I do think that the solution that we need is actually bigger than a text amendment. The root issue behind the need for social services isn't mental illness. It's not too high of housing costs. It's not drugs. Those are nice scapegoats, but ultimately, the reason that we need social services is because there are broken relationships. And so the good news is, since I'm sitting in a room of people who want solutions, I'm proposing that we can all be part of that solution. And so whether we have designated locations for social service providers or not, we can be part of the solution tonight. I brought these care packages that at least 30 of you can take home with you. I'll be passing them around if you would like. Because relationships are the bottom line issue here, we can all be part of the solution. When you see the next homeless person, give them this, but also give them your time, give them a relationship. And if that's too hard, we can leave it to social service providers to solve the issues. But remember, the poor will always be with us. And tonight, what you're voting on is ultimately where we want these people to be receiving the dignity that they deserve and the hand up that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, Dave Carter.
Kelly, can you put up the map of the zones it's allowed in? Do you have that? Yeah. That. Easy. David Carter, 709 Douglas. Thanks to you people for visiting with me over the past couple weeks. I'm going to speak about the need for a comprehensive social service provider strategy in our community and our county. When I became aware of this issue about 6 weeks ago, one of the first things I thought of is I need to know where in Ames social service providers are allowed and how many there are. Where are they located? And I was surprised initially, we don't know. So we know where they're allowed, but it hasn't been the task of the planning department to keep track of who they are and where they are. So we were able to assemble a listing of ones in our neighborhood or adjacent to our neighborhood. The planning department worked with who they knew as holding permits or as allowed uses in the neighborhood. And then, of course, Romero House, whom they were aware of. But the point I want to make is we need more information. First off, we don't know who all is a social service provider. In some ways, that's understandable because typically many of these providers endeavor to keep a low profile. Some of them are unaware of the regulations. Some of them are aware of the regulations but want to avoid them. But basically, our current system, while it may have worked well 25, 30 years ago, doesn't work very well now. And essentially what we've got is a situation where social service providers are basically self-reporting and self-policing. And actually that's what's led us into this situation where we have Romero House operating for a number of years outside of the zoning regulations. Our social service provider definition is old and includes a range of uses, and we need to do a better job defining what those are. Some of them have large impacts on neighbors, some of them have smaller impacts on neighbors, and I think we need to take a step back and do a better job deciding how we can work with the social service providers and solve issues rather than taking a narrow targeted approach in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to help clarify, this is the color version of the black and white map that was included in the council action form. So the brighter colors are the areas that were in that map. So if you want the black and white version, I have that also.
Thank you. All right, Josh Pfeiffer.
Hey again, guys. Again, I'm Josh Pfeiffer. I may not sound all the way professional all the time, so bear with me, please. But I lived at the Romero House for a couple years when they were housing people. And I guess I'd like to start by taking accountability for my actions. So I'm a part of the reason that closed down, okay? And it wasn't because of what they did. It was because of what I was doing, okay? Using meth, looking at stuff on the internet you probably shouldn't be doing, stuff like that, okay? That's my fault. And I apologize to the city for that and all that. I've done some stupid stuff since I've been here, okay? But I don't actively plan on continuing to do that. So as far as this goes, I'm in favor. The reason I'm in favor is because if it wasn't for that place, I probably would have been in Des Moines with a closed casket by now. That's the truth, okay? I probably would have died of a drug overdose, fentanyl, whatever you call it. I don't know. I know a lot of the homeless people, if not all of them here. I know them pretty well, more than a first name basis. I understand how they work. They have a number of mental health issues, drug addiction, and that. What Rebecca said is the bottom line. It's broken relationships. That is the bottom line. So in order to heal that, it requires people to reach their hand out, okay? And a lot of times the past, people's past, what's happened to them in the past, keeps people from reaching their hand out, okay? But let's be honest here. We live our past and we pay for it, right? We have to pay for it. What we do, we have to pay for, okay? Well, we've all paid because we're here in the present now, okay? We can't fix what's done in the past, okay? The key is you got to not be scared to reach out to people. I understand. I feel for the neighbors. I get it, you guys. Like, even at my house, when I don't want all the people coming and going and sleeping here. I don't want that stuff either. And it's annoying and it's ridiculous. There's just a way to come at people. There's a way, you got to hold your composure. I get it. But it starts with you guys, with the city reaching out. And it's not your obligation. It's not your job. I understand you want to be left alone to your own life and your own devices. I get that. But like was just said, they're always going to be here. You're never going to be able to eliminate it completely. So the Romero House provides a place for people to go, a place for them to eat.
Josh, you have about 10, 15 seconds
You're
left.
good. The bottom line is it's a place for people to go. I think maybe some stricter rules might be set in place would be a good thing. Other than that, it's a great place. It's kept me from dying. So
Thank you for sharing. All right, Ann Kinsel.
Good evening, Ann Kinsel, 720 Duff. Thank you for making public comments available even when the law did not require. I think it's an important value for our city. I think tonight we're here to talk about things that we share, values in common. We all want affordable housing in our community. We want to help the homeless, the unhoused. We want to keep neighborhoods livable, walkable, and we want to protect our public and private investments in our city. I don't think these things are incompatible. I think that as people of honor and faith and values, we can solve this. But I don't think we can solve this without good underlying data. I don't think the conversations that we've had have provided us with enough information to move forward. If we think about the two maps presented to us this evening, the first one that's up here now, and then the one with Mr. Carter, we have a huge difference in opinion about what the facts are about how many social service providers are in the neighborhood. I think it's incumbent upon us to make decisions about this when we know better what the numbers are. Furthermore, the definition in Ames of a social service provider is pretty broad. And I think before we make decisions about more social service providers or less, we need to think about that. And in closing, I would note that my first published legal piece was in 1988, and it considered the issue of the homeless and their position in the Fresno County Free Public Library system. I think we've come a long way since 1988, but I think obviously we haven't come as far as we'd wish with the issue of the homeless. But what I do know is that we're smart. We're smarter than we were back then, and we have better ways to look at data and to approach the situation. And before we make irreversible decisions, we need to have better facts, better information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Robert Martin.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for hearing everybody today. I wish to, my apologies. I spoke in the October meeting regarding the public safety benefits of having the Romero House at its proposed location, 702 Clark. I want to address two items regarding the zoning changes. I wish to remind the council that the operation of the Ames Romero House at 702 Clark would look much different if the location had to change due to the proximity of the residency for the staff. The location allows the staff access without the need for travel. It would also cause those who utilize the Ames Romero House, the guests, to have to cross Lincoln Way numerous times throughout the day to access the services in the area. Secondly, the idea of locating the Ames Romero House to the area south of Lincoln Way would be problematic due to the lack of available buildings that offer similar size, amenities, and atmosphere that is unique to the mission of the Romero House. A welcoming environment such as that available at 702 Clark location is one of the many amenities that this particular location has to offer. Additionally, the affordability of locations south of Lincoln Way is prohibitive to having smaller nonprofit organizations operating in the area. We currently own the location we have now, and so having to get another location or different location would be problematic and prevent them, the Romero House, from operating in that area. Thank you for the council's consideration.
Thank you. Kate Gregory?
Hi, good evening. I'm Kate Gregory. I live at 803 Kellogg. Thanks for listening to me talk tonight. I'm here to encourage you to not support the plan change in zoning. Right now, there's a perception that exists. People talk about it. I've seen it written by organizations on Clark Street that say that there's an ecosystem of social service providers who support the homeless community that exists between the library and Food at First and all the social service providers in that area. And I think that if you go ahead and you approve the Romero House continuing to operate, it kind of condones that, yes, the city believes this is the location for social service providers to operate out of. And I think you shouldn't do that in advance of getting the data and doing a study. Because right now, our homeless people are not being well served in this area. If you live in that area or you go through there, you see that just the incredible number of people sleeping in the street, using drugs, putting their drug trash and stuff in people's yards, defecating and putting bags of that in people's yards. It's not working. And if you approve this request as it is, it just sends the message to the whole community that you do think it's working. And it's not. I think that there needs to be a sense of urgency led by the city council that says to the city, what we have today is not working and we need to fix it. And then secondly, I'd also say it sends a message, especially to the community, that people can break rules, especially zoning rules, and it's okay. And that if you get caught, then all you need to do is go beg for forgiveness. And I don't think that's a good message to send. It doesn't really enforce the rule of law in our city. And it doesn't give the community a sense of confidence that the rules that the city sets are going to be followed. And again, it's just not serving either our homeless population or our community very well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bianca Conway?
Hello, I'm a board of trustee of the Ames Library. Very popular tonight, I see. So I am in favor of having as much access to social support as possible. Homelessness is mass rates of homelessness is due to repeat policy failures. People who are homeless are often mentally ill, both because being housed is inherently a traumatizing experience in a society, and because people who are mentally ill are failed by various systems. My degree for undergrad was in psychology and cognitive science, and I am pursuing an MA degree in therapy. And there have been incredible medical breakthroughs in things like schizophrenia drugs that work on a completely novel pathway of the brain compared to the old one. But the drugs they had for decades did not work. They were just purely sedative, and they were frankly brute force solutions. People have been failed by various systems, and we need to, and having people have proactive access to supportive places to feel human again can help increase security. Because as I mentioned before, there are violent groups in Ames that are known to recruit former addicts. And if people cannot get a compassionate support from people who are going to humanize them, they will get it from people who want to exploit them to commit violent actions. We need to rethink security as a relationality issue and not a matter of rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Nelson?
I am Donna Nelson. I live at 618 9th Street, and I'm in opposition to the amendment, specifically in the concept of changing the neighborhood zoning. At the meeting in October, the executive director of the Romero House stated that the clients they serve, by and large, have homes and apartments. I'm not disputing that because I don't know. But we have an issue in the neighborhood now of where do people go at night. It's the people who are unhomed, and that's really affected the livability, the walkability of the neighborhood. In cities as nearby as Council Bluffs, a lot of places in Texas, where, and this is apologies to you who read my email that I sent today, but I think it needs to be said that the cities that are succeeding with this, of small sizes, big sizes, are getting the detailed studies that show what could be done. And then they're looking at creative financing because it would be very expensive to get enough housing to house the people that are on our street right now. And so I think getting the data is critical. And this is me only, I feel puzzled that in a city that I moved to by choice in retirement 7 years ago, that I feel like we, the homeowners, are having to defend our residential zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Thielen?
David Thielen, 3974 North Dakota Avenue, Executive Director of the Ames Romero House. First of all, thank you for having another forum. I think we've had 5. Credit to the mayor and to the city council for allowing us to speak our voices. I was going to go a lot of different directions, but since you have my emails, I really want to highlight on a couple of things. First of all, following the rules. Ever since we moved into 709 Clark, the original Romero House, we called Kelly and his department and have followed every rule to the T to let them know what our services were, that we have residents living inside 709, and then let them know what the other services that we be providing. So we have been in communication with the city. Even when we bought 709, we started the text amendment process because we didn't know that we should start the text amendment process before we closed on the house. So that's the first thing. The other thing is I want to give credit to the city council for compromise, because I think we've come up with not a yes or a no, which was pretty much the way it was back in October. Now there's a proposal that will allow 3 or 4 different options. I've always found the best business decisions in my life have been based on compromise, because you get the best of both worlds. And sometimes you have to give and take on that, and we're willing to do that. The reason that 709 Clark works so well for us in the community, I want to give you a day in the life of what we see. A lot of the members live on the bridge home or live at the bridge home or in that area. They migrate in the morning to their morning venue, which is the library. Library does a very good job of taking care of the needy at the library. Around 1 o'clock, they come over to the Romero House. We invite them in for a meal, showers, laundry. But a lot of times it's just talking to them, trying to find out, what they need to get back on their feet. A lot of times it's talking to them about meeting other people in the community so they can help reintegrate them into the community. We're not just handing out bag lunches and saying, good luck, see you later. We're trying to reform the people that want to be reformed. So I think it's so critical that the 709 location on Clark stays in put. I've looked at the other districts, especially south of Lincoln Way. It's limited in the amount of modular small homes. There are apartments. it doesn't fit the model of what the city has in place right now. So the life is, after they see us from 1 to 4, they head over to Food at First and get their evening meal. So literally from the morning all the way to the evening, in this little ecosystem, we have the ability to take care of the needy in Ames. Lunch or breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I think that's important to keep that location at 709. It's where the agencies are. We have a great relationship with the police department. We keep in contact with them. They're right across the street. We have the library right down the street. We have Food at First right across the street from us. It's that ecosystem that's all in place. If we were to leave this area, there would still be a huge void for that afternoon population. Where do they go?
You have 15 seconds left.
So I just want to say that's the importance of 709. I want to thank the council for the compromises. I hope the city can look at proposals that are based on compromise and not yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Cruz.
Good evening. I think many people have already said it, but again, thank you staff and council just for the time that you're taking on this issue because it's obviously very important to our community and our neighborhood. I've spoken before about how I feel like if this moves forward, the conditions and some regulations is really vital. But I want to talk tonight about this updated staff report. So I appreciate the data and the research that went into that and the time that staff did that. But I think it's easy to gloss over it and to look at that map and say, like, look at all these places it's allowed. Or to say, okay, calls 2022, 23, 24 have stayed consistent or even gone down. But I think you need to take a moment to really look at what that data says. We've already talked, several people for and against this text change have already expressed how this is the only place where these services are being provided because of the surrounding services in the location. So even though that map shows many locations across the community where it's permitted outright or by a special use permit, where is it actually occurring at? Because unfortunately, this is not a problem or an issue that's going away tomorrow. And so these alternatives for just one rezoning one property or two properties at a time, while they're very much appreciated and well-intentioned, what happens next year and next year when these services are still in need? There's a new council, there could be a new mayor, the new request comes in. So then you chip further away slowly into the neighborhood. And that's an unintended consequences, I think, of some of those alternatives. And as far as the calls of services go, well, yes, I think if you look at the total numbers, it's gone down a couple for our neighborhood. But if you look at the types of calls, the ones that are increasing are the ones that that I think we're concerned about. Increases in, if I can read my writing, sorry, I should have brought my readers. Civil disorder, disorderly conduct, suspicious behavior, theft, trespass, and a couple other, I can't read all my writing, but those are increasing. So maybe the total number of calls in the neighborhood are going down, but the ones, if you look at the calls over the last 3 years that have increased, those are the ones that we really need to be looking at because those are the ones that are going to continue to increase, those types of calls. So I really just think that my opinion is alternative 4 or 5 are the best ones because we need to look at the data. We need to consider this. I think Gloria at the last, I can't remember if it was a work session or an actual council meeting when we talked about the research that the city's going to do, I think it was you that asked like, what types of services are being provided and where. And I really think that, again, even though it's allowed across the city in several locations, you're really going to see a concentration in our neighborhood and maybe south of Lincoln Way. And many people have already spoken how south of Lincoln Way isn't a better option or even equivalent to our neighborhood. So thank you.
Dwayne Shrunk.
Dwayne Shrunk, 709 Clark. When I was at the meeting about a week ago, I left with a couple of thoughts. First of all, what a great community we have. I had a peaceful walk home from the library. And then I thought that there's a lot of fear. around this issue. The homeless issue, whether to rezone, and they say fear is false evidence appearing real. I think there's a lot of false evidence out there. David talked about it, this false idea that the Romero House has just done what they wanted, rather than the truth that we've tried to work with the city at every step. A lot of false evidence, I think, about what's going on in the community, a lot of fear about people hiding in bushes and things of that nature. The second thing I was thinking is that fear is forget everything and run. We're just going to run from the issue. Let's not do anything. And I think this is an opportunity for the city council to do something. We have an organization, the Romero House, that has followed the rules and tried to ask for this use permit, special use permit. And I think this is an opportunity for us to take action. I think there's a lot of discussion about finding data, doing all this stuff. And I think that's just putting the issue on hold. So I think this is a good first step for the city council to approve one of the options. Personally, I like option 2, maybe limiting the amount of providers that can be in that area. And then I want to hit on this relationship thing. I think we're different than social providers, maybe many of them. You know, we use the term guests, but it's probably more appropriate to use the term brothers and sisters. So, you know, I was thinking a lot of us are going to be remembering going to grandma's house on Thanksgiving. That is what like a Sunday is at the Romero House for me. We open the doors and ask our brothers and sisters to come in. It's more than just a meal, a shower, clothing, all those things. It's walking with them. And I think that that's what makes us a unique social provider. And I think that that's another reason the council should approve one of the amendments that allows us to move forward. And then you guys can start tackling the other issues as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley Orngard?
Hello, everyone. Shelley Orngard, 928 Burnett. Again, thank you for letting us speak a little bit briefly. And I just want to talk a little bit about the need for affordable housing for young families. We know we keep hearing about how important affordable housing in Ames is. A lot of people have full-time jobs and can't afford to live in Ames. They have to go to other communities. But the Old Town neighborhood is a great family-oriented, affordable neighborhood. It's walkable. You can walk to the library. You can walk to the grocery store. Soon we'll be able to walk to the Schenker Plaza. And it's great for young families. I've lived in this neighborhood for 27 years. It's been, for most of those years, it's been an aging neighborhood. 10 years ago, there were 3 vacant houses within a block of my house. Now, one of those houses has been fixed up, but there's a young family in there. There's another one that's getting fixed up. And just in the last 4 or 5 years, I have 6 families that have moved into my neighborhood with young children. Just in the last 5 years, it's been trending in that direction. I think we need to keep it trending in that direction. People are investing their lives and their livelihoods because they believe that this was a great neighborhood for young families. And I think we need to keep it going in that direction. This is really about change. and looking down the road, what do we want the Old Town neighborhood to look like in 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Grace Martin.
Mr. Mayor,
Which
council
one's Mary
members.
Grace? Is it you or the baby?
It's me. She has a lot to say too. Thank you for your time. The Romero House is one of hospitality, more than food and shelter, but a place of love and comfort, a place anyone can go and be treated with respect and care. They aren't just meeting their needs, they are meeting the person. I'd also like to make the point that these services are for more than just the homeless. The Romero House has given me a place to eat on multiple occasions. Times are tough. And although I have a home, I don't always have a warm meal. The Romero House is somewhere safe. We can go for that. They're close to the library where we frequent as well, and many other services are close by. It's not easy to get around with my 2 twin babies, and it's nice to have everything close by, which falls within this residential area that both my parents and my young family reside. Whether this zoning is approved or not, homelessness isn't going away. Moving the Romero House isn't going to move the homeless. You can either have them off the streets and taken care of at services like the Romero House or on your streets. There's the idea of moving these services, but listen, if you want real problems in this city, then keep pushing the issue somewhere else. I have never felt unsafe taking hospitality there, nor having my babies there. Homeless, addicts, mentally ill, they aren't those people. They are people. We are safer with community, not exclusivity. A lot of us are one unexpected bill away from homelessness. And if your kids ended up homeless, you'd sure hope there was a place like Romero House that would treat them with loving kindness. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Hollick.
Hello, my name's Peter Halleck. I live at 114 8th Street in the Old Town neighborhood. I'm, to a certain extent, breaking with the rest of the neighborhood, and I support the rezoning of 702 and 603, 702 Clark and 603 Burnett, which is alternate 3. I feel that what this does is moves those 2 properties and connects them with the neighborhood commercial, which is just to the south of them. As presented in your agenda packet, alternate 3 also includes a text amendment to the neighborhood commercial zone, which would require special use permits for neighborhood or for social service providers in neighborhood commercial. This would put Romero House able to obtain a special use permit, which is exactly what they asked for. But the key for the neighborhood is the 4 blocks of neighborhood commercial, which are part of Old Town neighborhood, right now allow social service providers with no public review process. In neighborhood commercial, which is the 4 blocks from 6th to 7th Street between Clark and Duff, social service providers are by right allowed use in those 4 blocks of our neighborhood already. And What that means is that we hear so much about, oh, but this is so much better than the area south of Lincoln Way. Well, 3 houses or 3 lots away from or where they are located now is allowable. It's not like they would have to move across town. But I'm saying, let's just include them in that area, but let's put in place a special use permit process for those 4 blocks as well as, and of course it would mean all other neighborhood commercial around town, because that text amendment would apply to the category. But I feel that is the best thing. It removes a major vulnerability for the Old Town neighborhood, those 4 blocks that are wide open at the present time. And it also allows Romero House to accomplish their goals.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Well, due to the efficiency in all of your comments, we were at 44 minutes. And I've gone through all the cards and all those who have signed up. I have 1 minute left. You have 1 minute, please.
Hello, thank you for the 1 minute. My name's Angie Carter. I grew up at 709 Douglas Avenue, and I've heard a lot of people talking today about the services being provided from breakfast until dinner. However, the residents of this neighborhood live there 24 hours a day. I have not yet heard what is being provided in services for people at night. It seems from the evidence to me when I visit my family, when I return home, that they do not have services at night, that there is a public health problem, public safety problem for both the residents of the neighborhood and the unhoused people in the neighborhood during the night. So I please hope that you will consider the 24 hours of the day of the people who reside in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to close public input. Thank you, everybody, for being brief and to the point. And I'm just pleased that we got through everybody who signed up. All right, council. Any
Kelly?
Questions? Go ahead, Gloria.
Kelly, can you point out on the map the commercial area that Peter was talking about for the benefit of those who maybe aren't as familiar with these maps?
I'm going to go to this map instead. So this is alternative 2 if it's mapped. What Peter is referring to is this purple stripe here along 7th Street. That's neighborhood commercial. So that goes from Duff to Clark.
Kelly, there's been a lot of mention of definitions and where providers are located. Can you provide a little context, and maybe you won't know all of it, about our definition versus other agencies who would still be considered human service providers, who either may still have to go through a city process or who are able to operate in residential areas without city approval because of state code and other things, as well as providers who provide services within people's own homes as well, which obviously would not be covered by anything the city would do.
Yeah, it's pretty broad. When you first kind of talk about this issue, you think it's one thing, but there are a lot of different carve-outs from state law, as well as how we structure a zoning ordinance. So from the basic level, we first think about what a residential use is and describe that as household living, and that's based on the length of stay. So someone that's residing on a property has a little bit more permanence to them, so they're considered household living. And we don't care, income, ethnicity, any of the Fair Housing Act protected status things are not part of the equation for why you live somewhere, or it's just, is it a long-term stay location? And if you're not, then we're going to call you something else. But there are some carve-outs that are essential to providing services for people with disabilities. So there's a type of term called a family home. That's under state law. And even though it's in a single family home, it might be for the care of people that have disabilities. There might be more services than what you would regularly see at a single family home. But state law says we treat that as a single family home. And then you have things that we write ourselves and we customize our definitions. And that's where the social service provider definition comes into play. And it is pretty broad. It is like essentially anything from an incidental soup kitchen to overnight sheltering of a large population of people as a temporary living environment. So Bridge Home would be an example of a homeless shelter option. Food at First would be the version of a traditional kind of soup kitchen kind of thing. So in between there's a lot of ins and outs. Romero House squarely fit in that definition because no one is proposed to reside at the new location. So it could not possibly be a residential use if no one is living there. So that's what generated this text amendment. Now, there's other versions of group homes and treatment facilities that also have certain state definitions. There's some zoning definitions. So you see there's kind of a tree of different uses that kind of branch out from what's residential versus what's non-residential. And to be honest, not all of them require permits. Some of them are licensed by the state. We don't ever see them. Some do need permits from us. It kind of depends on what your status is. And we have to work through, when someone calls us or asks if we can do this, we have to work through, well, what do you have a state license to? First question we ask, well, are you licensed by the state? Because that'll help categorize you. And if you're not, then we work through our definitions and try to work to what is a permitted use and then where can you go in the city.
Other questions?
Well, before we go too much further into the weeds, I wanted to comment, Mayor, this format tonight that you used is the best format we have ever had. And I've been coming to a few of these things in the last 11 years. This is the most articulate, thoughtful discussion we have ever had in my 11 years. Absolutely unbelievable. And just love the engagement tonight and the civility that you modeled. Everyone is like super respectful. I have a super proud moment of my community tonight. And I wish the whole community was watching this live because this is the best of Ames right here. And I know I speak for council in this. Young man spoke tonight, Joshua. We are all in your corner and we want you to be successful. Good luck in your treatment. And we hope that you find a path forward here in Ames. I just want to make sure that we articulate that tonight.
Other questions?
Kelly, would you just for the sake of
Could you make sure?
sorry, would you for the sake of clarity remind us why what the OSFC zoning was created to do?
Right. So in the 90s, the neighborhood petitioned council to establish some protections for their neighborhood. The main driver was the conversion of single family homes into multi-unit rental properties, either through demolition and replacement or to even break up homes and turn them into apartments. Since it's an overlay, it has a base zone. In this case, it's RM, medium density residential. And medium density residential allows for a fair range of uses. It is not a common zone in the city, but it has been, or a version of that has existed on Old Town area for quite some time. So the overlay was a way to say, we don't want any more change. We're going to accept the kind of the balance that's there. What is unique in the zone is it does actually articulate how many multifamily units are permitted in the overall neighborhood. So there was an inventory back then and a cap was set of the most that could be permitted. So a few could be added, but not very many. And then it used design standards to try to make sure that any change that did happen did have a single family kind of appeal to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no further questions, I entertain a motion to get on the floor and for discussion.
Mayor, those people who have gotten emails from me, first of all, I apologize to anyone who has not yet received an email. I underestimated how many I was responding to, but you will receive a response. My concern is that we are somewhat muddying the waters of this discussion because we are looking at the intersection between zoning and homelessness. And I don't think this should be a discussion about homelessness. We know we have a problem. We know that we are investing in finding out what we can do to improve the situation. But we also have a zoning code, and we have a zoning overlay for this district. And to me, this is a question of zoning and what property owners can expect from that zoning. And the question that's been running through my mind is, can we say that we should change the zoning because one property owner requested a change of some kind? Now, I know we're talking about special use permits at this point as opposed to changing the entire overlay, but we usually spend a lot more time considering changes. And we just spent a number of years looking at our 2040 plan and determined we weren't changing this overlay, but we did suggest maybe we're carving out some other areas for neighborhood commercial. So it wasn't that we didn't discuss this area. And yet now we're being asked to make a change. And I am one of those people who does not feel we have enough information about where those social service providers are. And I honestly think that this neighborhood went through a lot to stabilize itself 25-ish years ago when they requested the overlay, and the city went through its processes. And if I had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in my home with the expectation that I was moving into a neighborhood that was a single family conservation district, which implies that we're hoping to save this as housing at this point, which is relatively affordable compared to many other areas of the city, I would understandably be concerned if now suddenly there's maybe a 2-month discussion of the situation and 25 years worth of this zoning may go out the window. And so I would like to move option 5, that we deny the request, which is not to say that at some point in the future we don't return to this in a different form, but I don't think that this is going to solve homelessness. And I appreciate everything that the Romero House does for the community, but that shouldn't be how we're making zoning decisions.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, discussion.
So I appreciate your concerns. I have struggled quite a bit with this decision. I think we have a responsibility to address the neighborhood's concerns, but I also don't think it's completely possible to separate, even if it's uncomfortable, the reality of the challenges that we're facing with a homeless population and the needs that they have. I think this particular issue has highlighted the fact that when we're faced with an opportunity to assist these populations, there is opposition. And this is not unique to Ames. It happens in a lot of communities. And it doesn't mean that we negate the neighborhood's concerns, but if every neighborhood continues to take these positions, we start to wonder then where can we provide services to people in need? And I think there's agreement that we have issues that need to be addressed. But if we're opposing agencies who are willing to expand to try and work through those challenges, I think our problems are only going to get worse. For the Romero House, I think we've heard various comments, maybe conflicting stories on the process that was followed and what happened. I think what you do is vital, and whether real or perceived, somehow there has been distrust that has been created throughout this whole process. And, you know, I mentioned last time, I've worked in human services for a long time. I've opened houses in neighborhoods, and I just know the importance of working with the city and engaging in the neighborhood from the start, because your mission cannot be successful unless you have buy-in from the community. So I came into this meeting tonight prepared to support Gloria's motion and deny the request, but I keep coming back to the question of what is the right thing to do. And we need to ask the question of what we want the neighborhood to look like, but we also have to ask the question of what kind of community we want to be. And I cannot let process get in the way of what I think is the right thing to do. And so I am not going to vote for the motion. I support option 3. And I guess we'll see what happens.
That was really well said. Thank you. And I second Tim's comment about the really great feedback we've gotten on both sides of this tonight. I think it does show that we're a community who cares, right? And I know some people, no matter what we decide, right, there are going to be people who leave this room and they didn't get what they want. But it's not because the other people are unreasonable, right? I think we're all reasonable people. And again, I appreciate the civility that everyone brought to the table tonight. So thank you for that. I also liked what was said about compromise. And I think this is one of those opportunities too, where the last time we talked about this topic, I think I felt a lot more willing to support social service use more broadly, right? But the more I listen, the more I'm hearing the concerns too of the neighborhood, right? And the fears of instability. And so I kind of liked option 2, though we can talk about those later, maybe. But because it's a compromise that would allow the Romero House to provide the services they are, which I think is valuable. And I think it's valuable where it is, because a lot of the parts of town where it's allowed, they have a more commercial feel, or and the house and the feel of the neighborhood is vital in producing that sense of home that might allow someone to rehabilitate, right? That I think is very important. So I would be supportive of allowing the Romero House to cap it at that one additional service provider. And we are undertaking a study on homelessness. So I hope that folks are hearing that too. Like we are going to keep looking at this issue, because we recognize that we do need a comprehensive approach, and there are other things that are needed in our toolkit, I guess, when it comes to addressing that, right? So this is not going to be the only conversation we have on this topic. Those are my thoughts.
Any other comments on the motion?
Sure. Again, this has felt a little bit like a congressional debate where you have people from both sides going back and forth. I spend too much time on C-SPAN. This had a C-SPAN feel to it tonight, so thank you, Mayor. For some people who are just becoming more aware of this problem, because in this last year we've had this huge spike in homelessness, Ames has had a lot of challenges thrown its way. So Boone closed its homeless shelter. Marshalltown closed its homeless shelter. And we receive a number of people from the Des Moines metro area. And what's frustrating to me is that Ames, because of its generosity and its hospitality, finds itself carrying the weight for really the central Iowa area. And none of these other communities have any compulsion to reach out to us and say, how can we help? So we're shouldering all of this. And when we think about what we're providing for services, is our duty, first of all, to the people of Ames. And I don't know how we even navigate who those people are. So some of the people who are homeless are clearly people who have been longtime residents of Ames, and they've lost their housing. So that's a thing. And there are people who have not been here long at all, and they're all sort of thrown together. So we're sorting out that data. But this is a challenging issue. I think I'm really struck by the cogent arguments on both sides of this. And I echo Bronwyn's points that there are very compelling issues on both sides. As I mentioned in the October meeting, I spent 3.5 years living at 318 9th Street, and I walked back and forth, and my wife and I raised young children in this area. So I have unique sensitivity to the nuances of this beautiful area we call Old Town. And I do want to see it protected and preserved. But we have to make hard decisions sometimes. And it just can't possibly be about one neighborhood. And we have to think broadly and globally as a community. And there are so many quotes that I would like to pull out of this long discussion, but I love Rebecca's comments ultimately about the importance of relationships. And frankly, I was inspired by that and trying to figure out what does it look like to become more invested in these solutions.
Tim, respectfully, could we
sure
comment on the motion?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to be voting against it. I support option 2, but I would like to suggest that it's not option 2 alone. I think there's a lot we can do to listen to the neighborhood and find ways to address some of the negative externalities. So if there are issues of policing, we know how to solve that. We can increase police presence. If there's issues of lighting, we can address that. If there are issues of do we have the right laws on the books? And I'm not here tonight to make a proposal on that, but I think that the conversation doesn't have to end with simply one solution. I think that this conversation and this turnout indicates that we need to have a much broader conversation. So I'm going to be supporting alternative 2.
Rachel or Anita, do you have anything you want to add? Or
I think everyone has made a lot of really good points, so I'll keep it short. I think since the October meeting, I've been in favor of a compromise. I was never as far as expanding it across the whole neighborhood, but I do think that with the importance of social services in our community, we should find a way for the Ames Romero House to keep providing these services. And so, yeah, depending on the council, I'm more supportive of alternative 2 and 3, and I'll be voting against the motion.
Thank you. Nita?
And I actually have moved more towards Gloria's thinking, but maybe not for exactly the same reasons. I do appreciate all that we've heard from everyone, and especially appreciate the work that the Romero House is already doing. But I do agree with some of the sentiment about making sure that we have enough data to make good decisions. When I think about the Old Town neighborhood, and one of the priorities of council has been to ensure that we have affordable housing within our community. That's a community that right now on Redfin, homes are at around 200,000. And you can't find that very many places within the city. And so I'm really concerned about making sure that we are making decisions based on both data as well as best practices. I do envision that that plan is going to be one that is community-wide, that there's not going to be a community in Ames, a neighborhood where there isn't going to have to be some response around issues of those that are unhoused. But right now, I do not feel that I have enough information to make a decision that I feel confident in, that we would not have some unintended consequence that is also of importance to the council to address.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Junk. Nay.
Corriere? Nay.
Rollins?
Aye.
Beatty Hansen?
Nay.
Betcher?
Aye.
Garten?
Nay.
Motion failed 2-4. Open to another motion.
I would move alternative 2 as written most recently in the staff report.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Corriere?
Aye.
Rollins?
Nay.
Beatty Hansen?
Aye.
Betcher?
Nay.
Garten?
Aye.
Junk? Aye.
Motion passes 4-2. Next steps, Kelly?
Yeah, Mayor. So as that alternative is written, that was direction to staff as approved to write language to clarify how that would apply to that blue area that is up there. So first reading of the ordinance would be planned then for, I think we said December 10th in the staff report. Is that? So we'll come back with a precise text amendment for you to consider as first reading on the 10th. And that is not a new public hearing.
Thank you. I just want to close, and I want to echo what's been said. I just want to commend everybody here. I mean, there's so much uncivility that goes on in our nation's capital and other places. I'm just proud to be representing you as mayor and as council. You'd be commended for the fact you can have passion. We can not necessarily agree, but we can certainly want the best for the community. And I'll just say this has been a really, really hard decision for this council. And I've talked to every one of them. This has been a gut check for, I think, everybody. But thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. Thank you for coming out a week ago. And I know that 75 people came out and gave their time and efforts as well, too. So I think that, everyone's may not be pleased with it, but I think that the point is that I think council's trying to be respectful of all issues. So anyway.
Mayor, if I could, so I don't know if this is the appropriate place for this, but is it possible that we can move forward with asking the staff to begin gathering information about the negative externalities that we're seeing and come back to us, and maybe not even with a list of proposals, but just I would appreciate a formal, organized sense. I want to make sure we've heard what people have said and gather that so that we could make policy decisions to try to address some of the negative externalities we've heard.
Not to kick the can down the road, but I think I'd appreciate maybe just if we could talk about this in the interim, maybe on the 10th, you could bring back motions regarding that, understand what you're looking for. Or can you articulate clearly what you're looking for?
Well, let me make a try at this, and if there's not, I'm open to.
Well, if there's a second, you'll proceed.
Yeah. So, Mayor, I would move that we ask staff to formally gather the list of concerns expressed in this with respect to the Romero House proposal and bring those back to us at a future meeting. Simply, this is an information. I just want to pull everything together, and then from that, we could look to see if there are some policy decisions that we could make as a result.
So first of all, is there a second?
So I'm going to second, but you're going to have to give me a little more.
Yeah, I think that we need to understand.
What-
First of all, you're going to have staff time that's being spent, and what is really what's the desired outcome?
Yeah, the desired outcome, I want to make sure that if there are things that we can do to address the concerns of the community, that we're doing those. And I think before I would feel comfortable in just starting down the road of making proposals, I would like to make sure that we've properly gathered all those. So we've heard tonight concerns about people camping out, drug use, mental health concerns, people feeling safe. I would just like to make sure that we've captured those from the emails, from the public meetings, and then as a council, then we can do something with that.
Gloria?
I'm just confused how that differs from what we got in the staff report and in the emails themselves that we've already received. Because I feel like I know that. What I maybe don't know is where the people reporting these things live, right? So there isn't an address attached to somebody was camping in my yard or something like that. That's new information. But otherwise, I feel like we have a record of the concerns.
Well, if there's not an interest in gathering this formally, I'll be prepared at some point to start offering some proposals for how to address some of the negative externalities. I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And we are going to go ahead and move on to item number 22. And we'll just take a quick pause for a minute while people leave, and we'll then resume.
Well,
What you're not
I think it's helpful to make sure. I'm going to be proposing that we increase policing and that they're here because we understand policing. That's in our minds.
Yeah.
If there are concerns.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Like that's more is like digging into the individual.
I appreciate that. I just, if there's still a amount of water. So I have like. So, no, what I'm doing.
Actually, we're not.
Thank you, City Council. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, we move on to item number 22. Item 22.
The next item is a staff report in response to a text amendment request that you referred for discussion. So property owner on 4th Street that has agriculturally zoned land has requested that the city council create a process that would allow for temporary events to be permitted on the property. As zoning is written today, we basically don't consider temporary any different than permanent for almost everything across the city. And agricultural zoning does not allow for very many uses. It's generally a holding zone in the city to allow for property to be farmed. Once in a while, there's other incidental uses. It so happens to also be the zone that is most commonly encumbered by the floodplain, because you can't generally build in the floodplain. And that is also the case on the 4th Street property, is that it is within the floodway of Ioway Creek. So the request again is to create some option to permit events. It would apply to more than one property. We've described a couple of options how this could be done. The first would be if you thought it was a significant issue or larger events, we would say the venue for that discussion would be the Zoning Board of Adjustment. You would treat it sort of like a special use permit, but you would give the board discretion to kind of review the circumstances of the use, establish a period of applicability for it, consider improvements that may be necessary to serve the use. There'd be a noticed hearing. All of that would go into that process. So it's a little bit more involved for the applicant, but it has more transparency and review and discretionary review processes attached to it. The next option that we created is something that does not exist today in the zoning code, which would be a staff level temporary special event permit. City staff does temporary event permits for city streets, city property, but we don't do them on private property under zoning. So this option is if you felt like the request was more minor, a lot less discretion would be exercised, then you would expect that staff could do that. Maybe there's a limited number of events in a year that could be permitted that way. It would be the more efficient option for an applicant with some staff review of that. And nothing would be considered right forever. It would be a one-time permit for a specified duration. It's not an ongoing right to use the property. So neither of these as temporary event permits are creating some kind of long-term use of the property. Now, it is a request for a text amendment. There's no obligation to change the code. If you don't believe that we want to further support use of agricultural properties for commercial or temporary commercial uses, then you would choose option 3, which is to not proceed with a request.
Questions?
Kelly, do you know how many agriculturally zoned areas there are within the city?
I so happen to have a map left over from the last meeting.
How convenient.
The green is the ag zoned properties across the city. And as I said, when you first get annexed to the city, you immediately are zoned ag. You don't get any other development rights within the city. So some of those areas, like out to the east in the Prairie View Industrial Center, those owners have never come forward with a proposal. So they sit there with ag land and they farm that land. And then you can see other parcels, miscellaneous parcels throughout the city, have been in the city for a long time, may or may not have development potential, and they're used for miscellaneous farming activities or other small things.
So option one would involve all of those agriculturally zoned properties.
I think either option was intended to apply to a category of zoning districts, which would be at least all of the green, which is the ag.
So even if we think it's not a problem to have the Renaissance Fair on the site of the Haunted Forest, we might have issues with other events that get proposed elsewhere. And in either of these cases, the approval of those events goes to someone else, right? It's ZBA and
Or staff. That's what we proposed. It just didn't, for a temporary event, it just didn't seem to rise to a council level decision. If that was a choice of the council, it could be written that way as well.
I guess my concern is when I think about the types of events, some of them I think would be pretty exciting to have, and I don't know where they would fit around town. But I do wonder how the neighbors would feel about having those events. And in this case, I don't know what the notification would be for neighborhoods within a certain distance of a proposed event, whether there would be that kind of outreach and involvement that we got on our last zoning issue here. And so I have concerns that relate beyond this immediate property and this particular event that maybe triggered the discussion. Do we know how many of these agriculturally zoned properties are actually being used for agriculture?
I mean, I would say the majority are, or they're either wooded areas or they're farmed. There's a few just sitting kind of unused, waiting for some other purpose. But for the most part, that the total acreage would definitely be farmed or wooded areas.
I guess the other question I would have would be related to I saw this in the notes here, now I'm just trying to find it. Compatibility with surroundings and adequacy of site improvements. So when we're talking about compatibility with surroundings, is that where we're also looking at things like available parking or traffic implications?
I think it's it's kind of catch-all for a lot of issues. Let's say there's going to be temporary toilets probably for them. Probably don't need them on the residential side of the property, right? So there's some little things about site planning that we can work through with someone. Parking, access management, those would always be something we want to look at. So it's meant to be kind of a catch-all of how much site planning can be done to mitigate potential conflicts with an adjacent property.
And would those occur with the staff approval of this as well as with a ZBA review?
I think so. I think the question is, so there's no proposed text tonight, right?
Mhm.
So if there's an interest, we have to write out what criteria would exist, either whether for staff or if it went to the ZBA. I think we would have some decision factors to help guide staff. We would need some element of review criteria. They would have to, the intent here is to be kind of flexible. They're not trying to build anything. So there's going to have to be some kind of envelope that's acceptable that staff will have to navigate. And I don't have that verbiage for you tonight, but that's something we would have to address and eventually you'd have to agree to allow for it to go forward.
And what would the notification requirements be?
If it was the option one and went to ZBA, it would have a 200-foot mailed notice requirement and a site posting and a newspaper publication requirement. Staff approvals have no notification, and no existing staff approvals have a notification process.
And with regard to the specific request, do we have any idea how ISU feels about what's being requested? I don't
No,
think I see
we have
anybody
not
here.
reached out to ISU.
Other questions? So again, the difference between option one and option two Would you please clarify that? And the fact is that there's a precedent that's going to be set here if this is followed. It's not just for this one-time event. It's basically creating a pathway for any property owner to apply for something like this, other events that would be in a certain zoned area. Is that correct?
I would say yes. I think option one, again, the ZBA is a board that already exists. They review special uses, variances, exceptions. Things are about kind of minor levels of use of property. I feel like the best model, if you're looking at option one, is at one point you created a temporary approval process for yard waste processing. So instead of trying to define all the parameters, you basically said the ZBA can, through their review process and notice, approve for 1 to 3 years yard waste accepting facilities. So then they work through the specifics of that issue. It's not a permanent right, it's a temporary right, but they work through the details of that particular site. So this, to me, I feel like that's kind of the same approach under that one, is you don't know. I mean, the sites are so different when you look at this map. Are they 1 acre in size or are they 80 acres in size? So it's kind of hard to say exactly with these kinds of sites, the absolute criteria that you would do that with. The board could do that. The staff one, again, I think the staff is a much more limited approval process. We're not going to exercise as much discretion. So it should be more of a number event limit. You could even, it's kind of hard for me to guess what a cap of attendees is because I have no way to monitor attendees. I wish I could say 500 attendees, that's fine, but we're not gonna have a way to monitor that very well. So I haven't proposed any use cap.
And in your option two, it says this could apply to areas such as ag, commercial, and industrial. That's an option.
That's an option.
It could be just limited to ag land only. Is that correct?
Correct. I think I threw that in there because let's say you have a vacant industrial lot and you want to host some kind of corporate event or something like that. Our code doesn't really address how that can happen. It may or may not happen on occasion if it's on your own property, but if it's truly a vacant lot, maybe this would be a process that helps that through.
Thank you. All right, well, public input. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic tonight? Introduce yourself and you come to the podium, and then you can try and leave your comments to 3 or 4 minutes. Appreciate it.
I'll be on. Lynn Ballard, the owner now, our parents have deceased, were longtime Ames. My dad started OA Ballard Construction and did a lot with Iowa State. Later, Riverside Manor Nursing Home. In fact, that's where this property came about. And believe me, we're all about the city of Ames. Whether it's been RAGBRAI, fireworks, anything we can do with the property. If you're aware from it, it's right across from the stadium. The city can use it forever. But yeah, just so that it's clear with me, we're not, and I think this is what we have to do if we would ever hold any events. You know, right now we've got away from the haunted forest. The primary use now is bailed for hay, but parking for Iowa State football games. In working a little bit with Discover Ames, Melissa, she came to us of other ways to maybe use that property to enhance Ames as far as events being held. And we're open to anything. And I certainly don't want any problems with neighbors or noise. And of course, it'd have to go through you folks for any type of event. But the Renaissance was some Iowa State students came to us to do that. We tried to abide, with everybody, and we learned a few things. But that's the primary reason, and it needs to be addressed, is for commitments, contracts, for advertising, and those things is the reason that we attended tonight. If we could answer any questions, what our plans are, and believe me, we want to work with you. Any problem or anything that we can do with police, with fire, whatever, that we can move on with it. And if there was something in the future, but for right now, it's primarily football, parking, and this was our first venue.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? All right, we'll close public input.
Mayor, move option 2.
Second.
Okay, so questions are, do you want to include commercial and industrial, first of all?
Sure.
Okay, and then is there going to be any kind of limit how many events per year, parking requirements, parking required on site versus parking in neighbors being okay? I mean, there's just, you start approving, or staff starts approving events, let's just say that there's some ag land, which is pretty small, and all of a sudden you have parking that's just going into the neighborhoods, then we'll be dealing with people complaining about that. Just, you want to have kind of a requirement that parking has to be provided on site? I'm just asking those questions because we're trying to anticipate being, because staff, once they get their responsibility, they're going to approve it. They're probably going to look for some requirements, or they're going to have to make their own judgment.
I honestly see this as a test balloon. This site means right next there was tailgating. I mean, this is a perfect site for having the Renaissance Festival. And so I love the idea of finding ways to say yes where we can. And if we try this and we stub our toe in some ways, we need to come back and provide some constraints. But I have a great deal of trust in the staff, and I think we should give this a try and find ways to bring cool events to Ames.
Well, this isn't just a one-time approval. This is basically, we're setting up, we're going straight forward.
Each individual permit is a one-time permit.
Correct. But the point is that it's not like the next time something comes, let's just say it's a ABC fair.
Well,
That's
we're
like,
not-
that's
we
like,
aren't saying though that every request gets approved
No.
willy-nilly. This is that staff would have the ability to make those judgments.
I mean, it specifically says that a set of criteria is going to be developed and they would have to meet such criteria
Yeah.
in order to be approved. So I assume staff's going to bring us back what that special event zoning permit criteria looks like, and then, or not, I'm just saying.
Well, so, I mean, I guess I was assuming we'd go through the normal text amendment process, which is P and Z, then to council. If you wanted to see the criteria first, we could add that at the beginning and then go through the process.
P and Z could give their input first.
Yeah.
all right. Those in favor of the motion? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, thanks. I love the Renaissance Festival. I went last year and I dressed up and I took my daughter and she wore her elf ears and it was great. And this is not at all an official city suggestion, but my only thought was that the cars got parked in the shade and the event was in the sun, and maybe just like switch it a little.
We've addressed that.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Sorry.
Stop. Please, okay, all right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Move on to item number 23, preliminary plat for 525 and 901 Southeast 16th Street.
For this one, we're looking at a commercial subdivision. We've described that a lot of the land is being set aside as outlots for either stormwater management, and then there is around 20 acres of developable land. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer that.
Questions? Open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Is there a motion?
Move alternative one.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye. Katie Hansen.
Aye.
Vetcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Very good. All right, let's just take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock. All right, we're back on session. We'll move on to item number 24.
Good evening. This is a report staff is returning with an enhanced tax abatement program for new construction net zero ready new homes that are also all electric. So net zero ready means when on-site solar or wind is installed, they will have no net carbon emissions. You all directed us to create this program when you adopted the citywide tax abatement program back in February for new construction. And so up on the screen, under option 1, you have what the criteria would be for a net zero ready all electric home. So that includes a roof that can accommodate solar and a certain level of energy efficiency performance. That's pretty close to what we're seeing right now in terms of new construction and their energy efficiency. That's what that maximum HERS rating score means. In the process of looking into this option, however, staff identified that being all electric wouldn't necessarily in the short term mean we're lowering carbon emissions because of where our the source of our electricity, which includes coal. So we designed a second option that included installing solar now. That has both a better return on carbon reduction in the short term and will include cost savings for consumers on their energy bills since on-site solar installed now. And it advances us more closely to a net zero home rather than a net zero ready home. So that's option 2 on your screen. So that's still all electric, but includes installation of a solar array. So next slide. This slide illustrates just so you're aware of the carbon emissions impacts of these two options. So with option 1, again, in the short term, we'd be looking at a small increase in carbon emissions potentially. And then when our grid reaches 50% renewables, we would see a reduction under typical homes that include natural gas for heating appliances. An abatement plus utility rebates could probably offset the cost of an air source heat pump, which you'd need to be all electric, but wouldn't offset operating costs because these could also be higher given the costs of electricity versus natural gas. With option 2, we would see about a 43% reduction in the short term because of that solar system being installed on the property. And in the long term, you could see up to 70% reduction when we have a 50% renewable grid. And with a federal tax credit that provides a tax credit for 30% of the cost of a solar system, other utility rebates, we estimate that with a city tax abatement for solar, we could take 5 years off the payback for a consumer for investing in a solar system. And just to put this in perspective, in the carbon emissions cumulatively, so option 2 is in blue and option 2, the solar option is in green, and option 1, the net zero ready home, is in blue. So you can see it's just the option was slightly above the average home until the grid switches, and then it takes us about 15 years to really see reduced carbon emissions under what the average home would have performed because this is a cumulative impact over time. Whereas you can see the options that include solar, we have short-term reductions towards our cap goals much more quickly. And this is the abatement schedule that staff had proposed with each option. So 100% for the first 3 years, and then the options are different. With option 1, it is a smaller abatement, given that we are seeing less carbon emissions, but there would be, a lower cost, a lower investment made. And just as a reminder, the current tax abatement program for all new construction runs until December 31st of 2027. So this would be concurrent with that program. And in 3 years, we could reassess both that and this program for net zero homes. That's it for my slides. So just two other recommendations from staff. To encourage participation in the solar option, staff also would include a builder incentive of $2,000 to encourage builders to market these solar homes just for the first 5 builders of each year. And then with either option, we would also recommend a high performance home partnership with a builder to work on building an all electric home that could be used as a template for future spec homes and hopefully encourage their adoption on our market. So staff's recommendation is option 2, the solar installation. Although option 1 is more in line with our CAP goals, we just saw the cost benefit of the solar option getting us towards those carbon reductions we anticipated in the CAP much sooner. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Questions?
Can you go back one slide, Amelia, or Kelly, or whoever's running it? So you said option 1 is more in line with our CAP goals.
Is it more in line with what the CAP said we should do in terms of a program criteria? Sorry.
Because this looks like it's
Yes.
more in line with our goals.
The
green.
CAP said by 2030 we should achieve net zero homes, scale up until then, do a net zero ready program 2026 on. So that's what option 1 said. But in looking at that in the actual numbers, we found option 2.
Can you go to the next slide? I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah.
How do you get
Yep.
almost $3,000 more dollars
So
with just the 40% in
Yep.
the last 2 years?
with the additional abatement that's on top of the current tax abatement schedule. So in the current tax abatement schedule, it goes 180, 60, 40, 20. So the difference of having that 40% greater number in years 4 and 5, I believe, is about $1,400 a year.
So
Per year?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Our current schedule has a value of $11,000 for just constructing a new ownership home. So these are the schedules on top of that $11,000 incentive that we already have.
Okay. It's just, on the surface, it just seems like this doesn't add up, but I'll take your word for it. Okay.
And
Other questions?
this is on a $500,000 home. So if it's a lower value home, you won't actually realize that level of abatement value.
And this is, if you know the answer, that's fine, but what would happen if they didn't have, if the federal tax credit for solar goes away? What would happen to the payback?
Oh, it's almost a third of the cost of the system.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not germane to the conversation. Go ahead. Rahman, do you have something you wanted to ask?
No.
Okay. Anybody else?
I wanted to commend staff. I had a chance to visit with one developer who talked about how much improved this current proposal is tonight based upon conversations that were had with staff. So that's sort of the goal of setting this out for engagement, and I think that happened. My question goes to something, Amelia, you said about the cost benefit analysis. And I would like you to just take a second and help us think through how do we get to the amount of support that we're providing to the property. So we can do that by looking at what other electrical providers are doing as a way of just sort of as a benchmark to see, are we in line with other municipal utilities or Alliant and so on. But we could also look at it from a perspective of a cost benefit analysis in terms of our climate action goals. So how do we how do we as a council think about the cost benefit of providing a subsidy like this?
Yeah, I think with the greenhouse gas inventory that preceded the climate action plan, there's a social cost assigned to carbon of $56 a ton. And you can also look at, cap and trade markets and prices to come up with what is the social cost or the city's benefit in getting a ton of carbon reduced. To do that, that cost benefit analysis on the city's end. So I did look at that with these options. I think with the amount of carbon reduced by the solar option, it was, 30, 50 years payback on the city's end of that social cost, is what I recall. But that's because of the amount of carbon we're reducing. Whereas the other option, might have, you're not investing right now a smaller amount. You're not forgoing as much in taxes, but with that short-term rise, the cost benefit for the city in making that investment is definitely doesn't work out.
And I apologize, I don't remember that number before. So is it, you said $56?
I believe it was $56.
And where does that come from?
The greenhouse gas inventory studied the impacts climate change could have on Ames to come up with that number and we cross-checked it with cap and trade market prices for carbon.
So yeah, if you have to buy your way out of your carbon emissions, that's what we're basically talking about. And you're going to pay somewhere between $30 and $60 a ton to offset your emissions if you're doing that. So at the low end is $30 if on that cap and trade. But if you kind of look at what Amelia is referring to is if you're trying to actually implement something to actually offset them and not just buy your way out of it, it starts to go up in cost. That's where you get to the 50, 60, or maybe even like $80 of cost per ton.
And this is really interesting. Is this a national number or is this a number that was calculated for Ames?
It's a national it's a market that exists nationally. So when we say a cap and trade program, that'd be like something California operates. And there's other offset programs that exist that, like, if you want to offset your emissions from flying on an airplane, like those are values that are assigned to paying for something to exist that has no emissions associated with it.
Well, that's very helpful because there will certainly be other proposals that'll come to us as a council. And I think it would take a lot to unpack where the $56 comes from. I'm not trying to go there tonight, but it's just helpful to know that really smart people have thought through this. And that's a number that we as policymakers can rely on as we do our own cost benefit analysis. Thanks for your answers on that.
It's interesting to me that we don't know what's going to happen with the energy portfolios of the other electric providers. We can judge what's going to happen with ours. And when I look at the graph showing the difference between a net zero ready home and the one with the solar, the other thing that occurs to me is that if you require the solar for this, even if that home is getting their energy from another provider, we are still helping to lower the carbon impact because we're forcing them to have the solar. Whereas if it's just a net zero, we're pretty much at the mercy of whatever the providers have in their portfolio. And I mean, I don't know if that's an argument for option 2 or not, but it strikes me as interesting.
Other questions?
I just had one. You mentioned about potentially partnering with a builder to build one that then could be used as an example. Is that, I didn't see that was baked into the options, but is it, or does that need to be a separate motion or procedure?
I think that's already been done.
Oh,
Not exactly. I think we would like a motion because you're going to be essentially telling staff to reach out to AHB, Ames Home Builder Association, And you're going to have to put funding behind that eventually. So we would need a motion to direct us to do that. I
Yeah,
think we've
so-
talked about it as an idea, but we would like formal direction.
Yes,
for
so
staff
that's
to
a
do that.
separate option beyond these two programs. Baked into option 2 is that additional incentive for the first 5 solar homes.
Okay.
So that
Gotcha.
one is part of option 2, but otherwise we need,
A separate motion too. Okay, because I really like that idea. I mean, I think, seeing one in action would be important for a lot of us, right? Those of us who are helping decide these things, builders, potential buyers, all that it'd be well served to have one we could see. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, we'll open up public input. Does anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? Seeing none. Any closing questions?
Just as a comment, I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a very sophisticated, market-driven approach. And I'm particularly impressed with the thought that has gone into the level of subsidy. We're not just picking a number out of the air. And I think whenever we take public dollars and use them to help build someone else's house, I think there has to be a rational thought that went behind that. And I'm very pleased with the thought that went into this. So good job.
Okay, how do we do this? There's a specific motion that we need to make for either, that would be the same for option 1 or option 2 or a different council proposed approach. So the motion would be is to amend the citywide ownership housing, new construction, urban revitalization plan following option 1 or 2 or something else. So is there a motion?
I would move that we amend the city.
We just may say option 1 or 2.
2.
Option 2.
Second.
If you move to second, if you want the exact language, I can get that to you. All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion regarding the any kind of incentive for the builder?
I was going to move that we direct staff to reach out to the Ames Home Builders Association to inquire about a partnership with building a model.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Not a little one. A normal size. Normal size.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Anything else that you need tonight?
Thanks.
Thank you for the good report and all the information in a concise way. All right, move on to item number 25, staff report on all-way stop for Ada Hayden Road and McFarland Avenue intersection. Damien.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item was actually from a memo that was at our last meeting that Council referred to be an agenda item on for this meeting for discussion. So what this originated from, it's quite loud. What this originated from was a citizen request to evaluate an intersection in Quarry Estates, specifically McFarland and Ada Hayden Road. Staff went up and we collected data, all the typical data we would do for this type of request. And what we found was either based on crash history, site distance, traffic volumes, pretty much all the data that you would look at to evaluate this. None of the standards were met. I think we typically try, whenever possible, to err on the side of a request when we can, but in this particular circumstance, it just didn't meet any of the engineering criteria. So because of that, you can see in the council action form that the staff recommendation is to keep the two-way stop that is existing today. But we did, when we did the site visit, we did notice a trail crossing to the east of the intersection that's unmarked. We felt would be because of the concerns about pedestrians and crossing and getting into the park, we felt that that would be a good thing to add increased visibility through markings and signs. So that's also included in the staff recommendation. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Thank you, Damien. Questions?
Damien, I know in other instances, I at least learned that if we do impose some sort of traffic control that is not warranted, and there's an accident, there could be liability associated with that. Is that something that is of a concern for us here if we decide to go with the many petitioners instead of with what you found?
Well, I mean, that, to directly answer that question, that is a legal question, because that would really have to be litigated in court. What I would say as your traffic engineer is that what you would see is, and that's where you see these recommendations, is you'd have to ask yourself, if I see stop signs at a residential street intersection that are installed properly, and that's the one thing is there is some discretion about when they get installed, but once you choose to install them, then they have a very strict standard of how they get installed. Like you'll never see a stop sign that's not octagonal. You never see it different shapes or different colors. All those things are very prescriptive. The decision to get to that point, there is some discretion. And that's where we tried to use all the discretion that we felt we could. But what I would say is that if we install a stop sign and you as a citizen drive up in there, you're not going to look at this data. You're going to look at, is that sign something I recognize and I would stop at? Is it reasonable that I would stop at a properly installed stop sign? Then I would say yes. But you'd have to dig deeper. If there was an incident, you'd have to dig deeper into all this history to actually see if there was any decisions that were made, I would say, kind of fragrantly or things like that. So I don't know that there's a liability risk in doing it, but again, I just go back on the context that we really tried to provide as much discretion as we could for this request. It just didn't. It's actually very well behaved, very safe intersection, so it's hard to recommend doing anything different.
Damien, I appreciate the detail that went into this. I mean, if I appreciate the people involved here may not like the outcome, but nobody can dispute that you haven't done your homework and given council a recommendation based on research. We say we're data driven. You certainly have given us this. My question isn't so much about today. I'm obviously going to be supporting what you've recommended today. But my question is different. We're seeing this is not a static area. There's a lot of development that's going on north of this and will continue to go on. So is it fair to say that as time goes on, as the conditions warrant, your office will continue to monitor this, and if the numbers warrant, you'll be recommending something different? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that any intersection in town goes through evolutions and will grow, just like every other part of the town grows. And so that's why you have permanent staff here that is looking at these things, reviewing these things. I know we talked earlier in the night about our transportation plan. That's another place that also reviews how things are going to grow and when we would expect traffic impacts and traffic control to change. So yeah, all these things are never one and done kind of decisions. They're always an ongoing evaluation.
All right, we'll open up public input. Does anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any closing questions? Otherwise, entertain a motion.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 26, Ames City Hall Interior Updates Phase 2. Any questions for Pa on that? Or Paul, do you want to make any comments?
Just really quickly, at your last meeting, you did accept the bids for these, but we delayed the award so that staff could gather some additional information. We have done that, and we feel comfortable with making the award to the lowest bid. So I'll answer any questions if you guys have any.
Questions? All right, entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to GTG Construction of Des Moines, Iowa, an amount of $336,500.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 27, Schenker Plaza update. Keith.
Good evening.
Mayor and city council members who thought it would be easy if I just showed you a few pictures, real quick. But in the meantime, there's a lot of information in the staff report. I know one of the main things that always comes up is with the ice skating ribbon. And with that, we're still having conversation. Just a reminder, Henkel gave us 4 potential options to consider. But there's still 2 pieces of information that we're looking for. One is an elevation survey, and then the second one is a ground penetrating radar. And that's really the second one is to find the depth of the mesh, because without knowing the highs and the lows and the depth of the mesh, it's really hard to determine which of those 4 options would be possible. So we're still working through that part of it. Part of the GPR is they do need to calibrate the equipment, and that will require them chipping a little concrete out. Henkel is going to do that work, so they'll take on the liability of that aspect. And then the city is going to contract with Terracon for the elevation survey and for the GPR, but Henkel has agreed to pay for that. So we'll just kind of go through some pictures real quick. Since when last times there has been some work that has been done. There's still work that needs to be done, but just inside the ice skating ribbon, they did put the artificial turf, down, landscaping. So in the report, we told you that trees and shrubs were not in yet, but those were planted. You can see that in the picture. Just go back. And then the other thing with that is the border in the landscape areas. So a couple things need to happen. They'll still need to come in and hydro mulch for erosion control in those landscape areas. And then wherever grass is going to be going down, they'll have to do a final grading. And then they'll hydro seed those areas, and they just need to make sure that the soil temperature is below 50 degrees, which we should be getting to if we're not there already. Performance stage shows you when they were doing the stairs. That's on the south end of the plaza, so that has been done. So spray pad equipment room, you got all of the equipment in. Did note in the staff report that we did notice that they installed the wrong chlorination system. So they are going to be replacing that at their cost and putting in the right one. We have the ice equipment room. Still a couple of things that need to be done there. So skate rental, that's from the outside. And then there's a picture of what the inside with the counter. There are some FF&E items that we'll need to do, shelving. We're not sure if we're going to put a skate sharpener in this area yet, but then buying all the skates. There is a bench outside so people can put skates. One of the FF&E items also is getting some rubber matting that will go over the concrete. So when they put their skates on, they'll be able to get to the ice. The valve box cover is in, but that's something that they still need to get accomplished and need to get done before the winter so we can keep snow and water out of it. Then this is before the pavers were down. The next picture is the pavers are included. The linear spray pad with the 2 colors, those white bollards, those are the activation bollards, and they're just sensory. There is no button or anything. So when you just put your hand up on top, it automatically will turn on the spray features. So the seating nook, that's on the northeast corner, with some pavers. Restroom screening, kind of wood that turned out, looks nice, looks better when you get up close. We do have, again, the 2 restrooms. Both are universal restrooms, what we're calling gender neutral. We do have with the next picture, do have the adult size changing tables. We've had good response of the ones that we have up at Innis Grove Park. So we put them in here as well. And then the one thing with the restroom piping, that was a concern when we saw this. We did do kind of a walkthrough of the building, and I mentioned in the staff report, I think we identified, or the architects and KCL identified 93 items that need to be taken care of. This is one that is a concern for us, that the lower pipe is, it's for vapor, or a vent pipe is what it is. And we said, what's going to happen is somebody's going to hang on that, that's going to break, that has to be fixed. So they're working on a fix to that. They'll probably run it up closer to that other pipe and have it tighter to the wall, so that issue won't be an issue for us. So then the one of the last items, this is the area just east of the pavers. There is a tree that is on bank property. There is that kind of that bank of dirt. Initially, there was going to be a wall there. We didn't put the wall in. One of the options to take care of this would, because of the slope, would be to put in a retaining wall. We said, no, we don't want to do that, because that was, I think, $8,000-9,000. So we have talked with the bank. They have given us permission to take the tree down. We will be doing that in-house. We'll be regrading that area, and then it'll be landscaped. So it'll be low cost, just some of our staff time. So, and with that, I would entertain any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Keith. Questions?
Why does the tree have to come down?
So that whole area, with it, so that tree, because of what has been done, and we're going to have to regrade, because there's no way we're going to be able to maintain that slope right now. So we're going to have to do some regrading. Already some of the roots have been affected, so that tree is not going to make it, very much longer. The bank really is it's not a critical part of their operation. So they said, yeah, you can take it down. So it's Gabby, our forester, she's looked at it, and it's just not going to last very long. So we'll take it down, and then once we regrade it, we'll have other things, probably some bushes, maybe some grasses, some other vegetation that will be put in its place.
Keith, remind us chronologically, we became aware of the problem with the skating rink concrete when? I've lost track. When was that?
So we first noticed the issue, I think, in February of 24.
February 24?
February of 24. Yeah, because they poured it in December. They poured it in December of 23. So this has been going on, yes, with and I could go through all the different items, but if you have a specific question.
Well, and so I'm getting a ton of public concern about the length of time on this. And so at what point do we say, and no one's disputing this. This is not Henkel's concern. I mean, Henkel's not responsible for this, but it's their sub. But we can't sue the sub. We sue the general. At what point do we feel like we've exhausted our options? I mean, is there an outer limit where we say we've taken these options to their logical point, and then if we don't have a resolution by this date, then the city attorney can advise us of our options? When would that be?
So right now, the two pieces of information that we're looking for are critical pieces of information, because they gave us 4 options to remedy the unacceptable surface. So we get that information. Our concrete expert will take a look at that information, and based on the depth of the mesh and everything, they will take a look and they will say, of these 4 options, they might say none of them are acceptable. They might say one of them is acceptable. Then we'll need to take a look at that and come back before council, and the experts will give us a recommendation as to how to proceed. So with that, we're hoping to get this information. Terracon, I think we're finalizing the contract. We'll get them to do the work. We'll make a decision. And if one of those options is good and our expert says yes, that work can be done in the springtime. If the expert says all 4 of these options will not work based on the elevation survey and the GPR, that none of them will work, then it's a matter of, I don't know that there are any other options. You know, we asked Henkel to provide them. This is what they came up with. So the only other option potentially would be to rip it out and replace it.
Well, let's just clarify, even if the survey is done and shows there's adequate clearance there to grind down, there'll still be a determination on what type of layering that has to be done. So you could pass that first threshold that has enough
Yep.
room to grind, then we're going to have to discuss the covering. What's the appropriate covering? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's a sealant on
And
top.
and we have the press here today, and so thank you for that. And I'm just trying to get an understanding from a time frame perspective. So we're looking at the spring before we'll have a sense of we've exhausted all of these alternatives. Is that sometime April?
I
May?
would hope that maybe even sooner than that, because if one of these options is acceptable and our concrete expert says, yes, our recommendation would be to go through and pick one of these four or whichever one it is, then the work could be done in the spring. So that's what we have talked about.
Right.
So, but again, now if none of those four options, are acceptable, then the conversation comes to what do we do next? And if it's a rip out and replace, then like we've mentioned to council before, then it could be a lengthy process.
And we shouldn't be afraid of that. I mean, this has gone on forever, hundreds of years, as long as we've had contracts. We have to sort of sort out how to think about the liability of a subcontractor. So we shouldn't be afraid of that if it comes to that. But what I worry about is that this goes on so long. So I'm going to make a mental note that we're hoping to get some resolution by, I'm going to just say late spring. I'm just make sure I'm saying this correctly. And then hopefully by that point, and I want to be optimistic, I would love nothing better than have one of these alternatives work for the people of Ames. But if it doesn't, then we start looking at our other alternatives. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion approving the monthly update.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
All right. Thank you.
Carried. Thank you, Keith. All right, move on to item number 28, hearing on pre-approval of industrial tax abatement for Whiffle's site plan at 220 South Teller Avenue.
Any questions?
Any questions for staff? All right, declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Hearing and seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on first reading of ordinance.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Rollins.
Aye.
Reedy Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move item number 29, hearing on Ames Plan 2040 Future Land Use Map Designation Amendment for Employment to Residential Neighborhood 3 for 32 and 3300 University Boulevard. Good evening, Benjamin.
Good evening. This request is to amend the future land use map for these two properties highlighted here at the corner of University and Cottonwood Road. These are part of the research park. They are zoned for the research park. And the owner of the ISU Research Park, the entity, along with the local developer Hunziker, determined that these properties might be better suited for residential as opposed to their current research park use. Research park zoning, RI, does not allow for residential uses by themselves. They are allowed in conjunction with other commercial uses. And so this land use map amendment request is in conjunction with the next item on the agenda, which is to amend the zoning. The properties are adjacent to the Tedesco Environmental Learning Corridor. They were never a part of the park, although the property at 3300 does look, it is indistinguishable from the park if you're just standing at the street and staring at it. And staff did meet with, at staff's request, the applicant and staff met with representatives from the neighborhood over the summer to solicit feedback on the proposed changes. There was some discussion about landscaping, but in general, I wouldn't characterize there as being opposition to the proposed change. Staff does find that the proposed zoning is in keeping with the RN3 land use designation that is proposed, which is one of the reasons that there are 5 different residential designations. And so we arrived at 3 because it met with what the proposed zoning is going to be.
Thank you. Questions?
I was thinking that we received an email
Correct.
about this, and now I can't find it in
Well, I
the
think the essence
sea
of
of
the essence, the question was that during construction, they're asking about access. A resident lives across the street, and they were just asking, I think in the apartments, about will there be the ability to still get into the park and, during construction. I think that would be something that we just refer to staff and ask them to, talk to the contractor and
Yeah,
just
and
make
for
sure it's maintained.
and for the next item as well, I can pull up the proposed site plan to show the entrance will be changed slightly. I don't know exactly though about during construction what that will be like.
That was our big question, was during construction, I believe.
I think there was also a question in that same email about
Trash.
the trash, and the, I don't know, the shielding of the trash receptacles or something, which I don't know whether that relates to either of these 2 issues that we've got. It only occurred to me now that that was one of our packet items, so.
Actually, it came in, I think it came in this afternoon, so it's not in.
Oh, it's not in, no wonder I couldn't find
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah,
buried in
yeah.
all the other ones.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll declare a public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing and hearing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving the map amendment.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to item number 30, hearing on rezoning of 3200 and 3300 from RI to FSRM
Yes.
with PUD.
Yes, same property again. This is for a zone change with a the FSRM floating zone residential medium density and with a PUD overlay for both of the parcels. Also a major site development plan for the south property. For the north property, the details have not yet been worked out. And so as a part of the zoning is a master plan that just outlines kind of big picture moves. There will be multifamily there. There will be no more than, there are proposed to be 25 units on the south lot, 74 on the north lot. And there's going to be shared access as well off of the traffic circle there at Cottonwood Road. I'm happy to go into the details of the site plan for 3300. It's going to be a mix of apartments and townhomes, 2 apartment buildings, each with 8 units, and then 3 groups of 3 townhomes each that'll be along the east side. Staff did work extensively with the developers to make sure that the site was sensitive to the park, because we realize that the park is valuable. Included in the discussions were the Story County Conservation Board representatives who also gave input as well on what that interface would look like. And we worked as well to make sure that the east edge along the development was well defined to make sure that there wasn't any spillover of the residential uses into the park.
Questions?
It's a great plan and we need more housing, so this is awesome.
Other questions? Comments? I'm also having difficulty finding the email, Glory, but I know the comment was about potential for wind-blown trash bags and stuff like that from this area. It wasn't being critical of the design. It was more or less just making a comment. Would there be structures that would kind of help prohibit that from blowing into the park area, I guess is what the question is. We'll find it and forward it to you, Benjamin.
Okay. Yeah. As part of the site design, the applicant is required to have, trash receptacles, dumpsters, and they are required to be screened.
Yeah, I think the point was they live in apartments to the west, and they say that usually the dumpsters are overflowing, and then wind picks up and blows either bags or stuff around. They were just hoping that that would be somehow controlled in that particular development, so it didn't blow into the park area, I think. So they weren't speaking against it. They knew there was screening. They were asking, I think, for more aggressive screening and also trying to make sure that there's adequate capacity for that. So I think again, they were not saying this is a bad design or they're opposing it. It's just more or less
No, it's
the
based
detail.
on past experience with other properties and trying to, because this is right next to Tedesco,
Right.
they were concerned that this would have a significant negative impact if it happened here too.
Yeah.
Looks like it's
Understood.
Which one?
Laura, Loralarr.
Okay.
Came in at 226.
Yeah. So we'll just forward it to you, and you can forward it on to the applicant and just ask them to look into it and make sure there's taken into account. That's all. So
Absolutely.
I think it's a valid point, but okay. I declare a public hearing on the rezoning of these properties to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Hearing and seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance for 3200 University Boulevard.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Corrieri.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance for 3300 University Boulevard.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on resolution approving site development plan for 3300 University Boulevard.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corrieri.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Benjamin. Move on to item number 31, hearing on Ames ISU Ice Arena Radiant Heat Replacement Project. Any questions for staff on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll declare a public hearing on the Ames ISU Ice Arena Radiant Heat Replacement Project to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare a public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on accepting report of bids.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Entertain motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding a contract to Converse Conduction Air Incorporated, Ames, Iowa, for the Ames ISU Ice Arena Radiant Heating Replacement Project in the amount of $114,500.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Sorry, I skipped someone. Junk.
Aye.
Corrieri.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain motion on resolution allocating $58,725 from the Ice Arena Capital Replacement Fund for this project.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corrieri.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, move on to disposition of communications to council. We have quite a few. First is Ames resident input from October 4th to November 20th on the zoning text amendment, item number 21. So those run. I know that council looked at those. Those just for information. Item number 2, Luke Lanson and Matt Hirma, pastors at Stonebrook Church, expressing safety concern at intersection of Bloomington Road and Eisenhower Avenue. Is there a motion to refer this to staff?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is an email from Debbie Carter regarding a request for increased police patrol. I think it would be in order to
Just thank her, brother.
To thank her for the email? Or is there other motion?
So moved.
Has it been sent to Chief Huff?
No, we'll make sure he gets it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would move that we thank her and let her know that we will
Being
make sure
forwarded.
Chief Huff gets her feedback.
Okay.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Okay, item 4 and item 5 are really submitted for council's information, unless you want to take any kind of action on those. Item number 6, request for extension on sidewalk installation at 408 Cochran Parkway from Amy Schmidt. You have any suggestions on that, Steve?
Kelly, that sidewalk, the extension on Cochran, should that go right to the agenda, or do you want to have a memo on it? Tired of memos?
It was a condition of a boundary line adjustment. Either you extend it or you don't.
So put it on the agenda to deal with it right away.
Yes.
Can't take action tonight.
Will be placed on agenda.
Second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Request for a 4-way stop at Kent Avenue and Aspen Road from Jameson Weber. Is there an interest to refer or decline?
Didn't we just recently look at? Maybe that was Aspen and Northridge or Aspen and.
Yeah, I thought that was part of.
I thought they included all of those.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe we needed to get, we needed to ask staff, and I don't know whether we need a memo back, but we needed to ask staff whether we had looked at it.
You get a
recently.
memo back on it.
I would move we get a memo back
Right.
on whether we've looked at this
I don't
recently.
remember, actually.
Okay.
Hmm?
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'm thrilled about it too.
The enthusiasm is showing. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carried. Next is an email about crime in Ames from Joe Monahan. May I suggest acknowledging receipt? I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
I move we acknowledge receipt.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, item number 9 is
It's information, but I want to point out there's some concerns about us removing parking off both sides. We're not going to do. We're keeping this status quo on parking on both sides. We'll do a survey and see if some of the neighbors wanted to remove the one side or not. To give you an explanation, there was a concern about we had narrowed the street when we rebuilt it to be more in keeping with other residential streets. Originally, it was a Sauride bus route, so it was wider, trying to reduce impervious materials. Yeah, so that's why we did that.
But we're changing. Am I?
You wanted an explanation of what
An
happened.
explanation. Yes, perfect. Okay.
We just need to forward that on to
people's
the
emails.
original individual. Because
you-
I think I was the one that started
Were you?
that. I sent it to you and you.
But if you get any
yeah.
questions, we're not removing the parking
Yeah.
to, on one side only.
Okay.
We will survey it because there's some people who do want to remove. They wanted it before. It was actually narrower than a standard street before.
Okay.
So I don't want anybody to panic right now on taking the street, parking off.
You want staff to go ahead and forward this email? You want counselor to forward it to this lady?
I mean,
Well,
I've been communicating with
Okay,
her. I can
you'll take care of it?
send it on to her.
All right.
Yeah, and number 10, I think, I don't know, is Brian, was that you? You're asking for different options on 13th Street, movement, 13th and Grand movement. There's a report from Damien in there, and we're still recommending that we go with that alternative A. Did you read that yet? But we're really saying if you disagree, we're going to go ahead and still do it the way the consultant worked it out. You would, I think it was you, maybe not, but the council certainly referred it.
I remember that.
And we looked at all three options as alternatives.
Okay.
It's a little more costly, but it'll be more efficient and in keeping with our climate action plan to keep traffic moving. Do you remember that? So It's not just for information. We're basically saying we're going to go ahead with A until you stop us
Yeah.
if you disagree.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that, it was more the pedestrian safety element, I think. But if that's.
It is. You'll see the
looks like-
trade-off in there. Yeah, go ahead. In the report.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. No action at this time.
Well, they're proceeding with the project, right?
That we're proceeding unless you tell us not to with that.
So I mean, the point is,
alternate A.
I just heard you say at this time, I mean, the point is that the longer it goes forward, the more
We'll have to
difficult
change
it
it.
to
Yeah, we're-
change. So if you're comfortable with the report and moving forward, then I think they'll just presume that we're okay and moving forward with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Number 11, recent traffic studies on Hyde.
Yeah.
That's just for.
For information.
Yeah, it's for information.
That's good.
And same for number 12, speed concerns on Dotson Drive.
Yeah, but we're going to go ahead and, did you notice we're going to move ahead with the dynamic feedback speed signs as a way of traffic calming?
Okay.
Then we'll monitor the impact and maybe there's more aggressive alternatives if we need them. Remember referring that to us or?
Yeah.
I think, Anita, you were waiting for that answer, right?
You want to respond to the person who raised that question?
Yep.
Let them know what's going on. Okay. Anyone that we need response to regarding the Hyde Avenue speed? Yep.
I forgot, anybody remember who brought that up? You all voted for it, but
Well, the point is, if this is a follow-up to a request from a constituent, it'd be probably good to get this sent back to them.
well, Carly can find out who's originally, well, do we attach it?
I do not believe it was attached, but
I
I can
remember-
find out.
We're going to be dealing with these speeding issues on Hyde for all eternity.
Yep.
It's just the nature of what poor planning that road had, and we're just going to be dealing with this forever. I don't know.
Actually, doesn't refer.
Yeah, you referred it, but I
It was
forgot
referred
who-
by council in May, but it does not indicate that it was in response to an email from anybody.
Maybe Carly can find out later who sent it and we can send the staff report.
Well, this is good. If we do get additional comments, we can refer back to this in terms of saying this has been done without having to refer to staff again. Okay, move on to report of governing body. Any reports from Discover Ames?
You want to talk about the grants?
You can go for it.
Well, 92,000 went to community grants, and Rachel was on that committee. I heard it took 2 days to get through all of them because there were so many that they needed to take a look at, but it sounds like the committee was pleased with the number of folks that were applying, and so, yep, that occurred, and then
What were the grants for?
these are community, go ahead.
Yeah, they're community grants. So the hotel motel tax in our ordinance states that 5% of that funding goes to grants for community organizations and events. And so we were able to distribute, 92,000 this year and had a record number of applicants too, which is pretty exciting.
Good, great. Anything else?
The 1864 store is open, so,
Mhm.
and staffed, so folks should stop by.
Okay. Ames Regional Economic Alliance.
I took a bunch of notes and I left them at home. So I will happily report at the next meeting.
Very good, thank you. Tim, anything from Schema?
Nope.
Transit.
Yeah, a few fun things. So we got a public comment request from the Public Art Commission to partner and do sculptures at the bus shelters. And so looking into that, that was fun. We got a report on the first 2 of the battery electric buses that we've had in circulation for about a year now. So we have 2 battery electrics that are running past 12 months. And we, through them, have saved, or we have reduced greenhouse gas emissions. It looks like 108,000 pounds down from those 2 buses. And considering one of them was in repairs for, I think there were 2 of them that were down for about a month each. So when they're up and running fully too, it just gets better from there. So, and then We looked at rate setting. I think Cyride's real hesitant to move forward on rate free or fare free, but we did make some progress on getting an app that a person could use to purchase their fare with. So it is still $1 for a regular adult fare. And then there is a reduced fare for K through 12, Medicare, Medicaid, 65 and older, and those with disabilities that they can arrange to do a reduced fare. That's in place. But I'm excited about that app. I think getting us into the modern day with being able to buy a bus fare on a smartphone will be really helpful. So those are the highlights.
Great. Thank you. All right, council comments. Gloria, we'll start with you tonight.
At the start of the meeting, we heard a couple of comments that I am hoping can be directed to the chief of police, just for his information. Yanka Mitchell-Conway mentioned the neo-Nazi posters on South Duff and the training that might be associated with spotting or dealing with these sorts of things. And Josh Pfeiffer raised a concern about drug dealing, especially south of Lincoln Way around the Bridge Home. And I don't want to request a memo or anything like that, but I would like to make sure that Chief Huff gets the minutes from the meeting and understands those citizen concerns.
Is that a motion?
Well, I don't know if I need to make a motion or not.
I think you should.
Okay, I would move that we ensure that Chief Huff gets the minutes that indicate the challenges that two of the residents raised about policing in Ames.
In public forum. Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
And I would just like to reiterate the thanks to everyone who has been involved in the process of giving us feedback for the decision on the single-family conservation overlay and the Romero House. And I hope that we have positive outcomes.
Thank you. Tim?
I'd echo Gloria's comments. Mayor, thank you for efficiently leading what could have been a much more contested discussion tonight. I thought was very civil, and much of that was due to the way in which you structured it. So thanks for that. And it makes me glad to live in Ames. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Rachel?
Nothing tonight. This is more of a general comment, maybe something we can revisit at goal setting. It wouldn't be our first time discussing it, but it seems like we don't have a clear policy on what ends up in our non-agenda packet. And there appears to be more, what I would call more random, like emails ending up in there than have in the past. Not anyone specifically requesting anything, just providing their commentary on a particular subject. And not everyone who does that ends up in the non-agenda packet. So I'm not really sure how we are delineating between what goes in there and what doesn't. So like I said, I don't have a specific motion, just something to think about and maybe something we can discuss.
I think we can fast forward that, and I can certainly talk with Steve and Renee and do, some more specific filtering, on that. I think we're trying to keep them all out in front of everybody, but duly noted, and we'll look at that and appreciate the feedback.
I would just echo the thanks to the community for the great discussion surrounding the neighborhood as well as Romero House and how we will be attempting to address issues of homelessness within the city. And we are all confident there is more to come. We want to thank Paul for the work she's been doing to start to gather some of that data and information. We look forward to that, as well as the work that Asset's doing. And so more to come.
Thank you. Alan?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Is Emily on the phone?
Hi.
Hi, Emily.
She is.
She is. She exists.
Hi, guys. I just want to say thank you all for being at the meeting last week. there were a few of our senators who let me know some of their information for the very first time at the meeting. So I will be communicating with them in the future regarding the information that they shared during our meeting, so that we can address everything going forward. I think I learned a lot for the spring meeting, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate you guys being there, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I would echo what Emily just said. I know that student government really appreciated everyone coming. I know there wasn't an opportunity at the very end for people to talk about projects that were significant. So we talked about potentially just shifting the agenda so that we had something like that more open on the front end, and then get more into the specific, comments. But it was a great turnout. Thank you to all of you for making it a priority. And we just appreciate student government. Emily, thank you. Great job. Tell President Hirsch and Vice President Margaret, for their help as well too, and their commitment and passion for establishing and building strong relationships. And I too just echo everyone. Hope everyone enjoys a very safe, happy, and good food Thanksgiving time with family and friends. And with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.